The club said, well, I know Men Love Gardens north or something, so I think they just all thought, well, it must be there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a north, south, and a west, so why not an east?
Yeah. So despite not knowing really anything about this, it just being kind of a blind call, Wallace decides to keep the appointment. So the next day on the 20th, he arrives home from work around 6 p.m. and then sometime between 6:30 and 6:45, the milk boy stopped to pick up his money, which he got from Julia. He said, I got it from Julia. There's been some speculation that it was Wallace in drag, but I'm sure it wasn't. It was definitely Julia. And then I don't know how the milk boy would have known what time it was.
He said he saw the time on a church clock.
And there was
either right before or right after.
And there was one.
Yeah, there's a church a few blocks away that's got 3 clocks on it.
So he would have known.
Yeah.
So we can presume his time is about correct?
Yeah, I don't know if the police checked the church to see if the clocks were correct.
Yeah, I don't know.
That would have been something to check on.
Turns out they were running on daylight savings.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
that would be too bad.
The Liverpool police in this case, what are they? The locals called them the Jiggery Pokey Brigade.
Yeah, they're not very good.
Or Jiggery Pokery Brigade.
Yeah, they didn't have the best reputation.
Yeah.
I think the milk boy saw Wallace there too. I'm not sure. But I got on Google Maps. I pulled a Joe. Got on Google Maps and mapped directions from the Wallace's rented flat to 25 Men Love Gardens West, because that's an actual address. And on today's transit, it would take no less than 37 minutes. And according to the train schedules at the time, which I actually looked up, he would have had to been on the tram at 6:49 p.m. for the whole timeline to make sense. And it's verified that he's coming off of that tram at exactly the right time. So we can assume, I think, pretty reasonably, that he was definitely on the tram at 6:49 p.m. that night.
Yeah. And
based on the conversations that directly followed that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And how far was the tram stop from his house?
Not very far, but...
Okay.
It's a bit of a walk. But
maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Not anything...
Now, okay, hang on. So I remember something about, in their Osma investigation, the police having a young, fit officer play the part of Wallace. And I remember there was discussions of him running. And so I was under the impression that meant that he was running from the house to the tram stop, which made me think the tram stop was farther away.
Oh, the 2 mile running thing?
Yeah, 2 miles.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
And that he ran to get there at 7:06 to make this transfer?
I don't remember the time.
Okay, so the 2 miles thing is that he made a transfer to a different tram and had an interaction with the conductor of that tram.
Right.
And that transfer spot was 2 miles away.
Oh,
so I presume that they were trying to see if anybody fit could run that 2 miles in the allotted time that they would have needed.
And bypass the first tram.
And bypass that first tram.
Even though Wallace was 51, bad kidney, I think he had a bad heart.
He had meningitis recently.
Yeah.
I think he was a heavy smoker too, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah.
So
actually,
it's absurd to assume that he could have kept that pace.
Well, and then nobody would have noticed this guy running, breakneck pace.
Right, or that the conversation he would have had with the conductor wouldn't have said, oh, and he was super breathless.
And by the way,
he would have been
sweating.
Yeah.
Sweating a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, the police didn't just do one detective running. They sent out a half a dozen teams at various times to try different
just
theories
to see,
and stuff.
Which is probably the most thorough job they did on any part of the investigation.
I know.
But no, I think that's what you're talking about, the 2 miles that you're thinking of. I think that tram stop, and I'm sorry to anybody who's going to call us out on that, I don't actually know, but I think it was a 5-minute walk or something like that.
Okay, so it wasn't too far away.
It wasn't that far, yeah. Because the 2 miles that you are talking about is the transfer he made.
Was 2 miles away from his home.
Was 2 miles away from his home.
Okay.
From one tram to the other. They're streetcars, right? You guys know what trams are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was at 7:06 p.m., which, was right on schedule with him being on the tram right before at the 6:49 mark. And he had a conversation with the conductor, and he asked him directions to Men Love Gardens East, and was told to transfer trams again at Penny Lane. And he spent most of that 10-minute ride pestering the driver to not forget to call out Penny Lane. And a lot of people think that's suspicious. I think it's
possible.
I think it's just like a nerve. I I've done stuff like that before, not like the entire time, because I've then gotten really awkward and thought like, oh, I'm annoying this person. But if I don't know where I'm going, I get really anxious, and especially if I were trying to make a meeting and I really didn't know where I was going and was maybe running a little late by my own sense, I definitely can see the like, okay, but don't forget to call, like, don't forget to do it. Have we missed it? I really don't know where I am right now.
It's not
What's
like everything was lit up and easy to see.
Yeah, it's January. It's, you know, it's
1931.
We're December and it's dark at, 4 o'clock right now. So it's dark out, and also, you can't pull your map or phone out of your back pocket. You have no idea what's going on.
Wasn't as easy back in those days.
Yeah, so I don't think it's as suspicious as most people think, but some people do think it's really suspicious.
Yeah, a lot of people feel that he tried to call people's attention to himself. Repeatedly.
There's a lot of that in this story, though. But there's a lot of, I got to admit, I'll just tell you right now, there's several things that I'm just going to point out with one word, which is claim.
Yeah.
They make a lot of claims about certain things that he did.
Yeah.
And this is one of them.
Yeah.
So the conductor, of course, did not forget to call out Penny.
He wanted him to get off the stupid train.
Yeah, he was like, oh my God, get off now. He's like, this is your stop, get off. And Wallace made the connection, no problem. He got on the next tram, and he asked the conductor promptly, hey, where do I get off for Menlove Gardens East? The conductor said, you get off at Menlove Avenue and walk, and probably was told to just saw it off and look for it.
Yeah,
would be my guess.
Quit bothering me?
Yeah, just get off here. And it was only like a 600-foot ride or something like that.
Yeah, it was stupid short,
but I think all the conductors were just like, you do this. I don't know, you just do this thing. But he got off at the avenue and started to search for Menlove Gardens East. There was a Menlove Gardens North, South, and West, but not East. Apparently, he was really determined, so he asked a number of passersby, where is this street? None of them had ever heard of Menlove Gardens East. He went to 25 Menlove Gardens West to see if they knew anything about it. They said, no, we've never heard of anybody, and we didn't make a call, go away. Wallace did what you're meant to do and found a local beat cop next. And, okay, there's the claim. And I think the cop said this, so I'm willing to say that this happened. But instead of just saying, oh, I'm looking for this address, he apparently regaled the cop with the entire story of the call, and then the train ride, and then the difficulty he's been asking people all the time, and, oh, do you know where this address is, finally, at the end of that. And the cop said, no, that place doesn't exist.
I got the feeling through some of the things that he's said and done before everything happened, and then as it was going on, he was just kind of an awkward guy. He was just one of those ones
I think he was super shy cut to the chase and anxious, and didn't really know how to interact with people. That was my sense of him. Yeah, definitely. So he was not satisfied with the copper saying, no, that's not a thing. But he did ask the cop what time it was. And he asked it in kind of a strange way, apparently. And he said, it's not 8 o'clock yet, is it? And the cop said, no. So he checked the time, and he said, no, it's 7:45. And Wallace looked at his watch, and he said, oh, yeah, it's 7:45. And again, people think that's suspicious, which I don't think so, but okay, fine, whatever. He was still not satisfied, so he walked over to a local newsstand, and they had directories in the newsstand, apparently. So he looked through the directory. Still, the address didn't exist. So finally, he's had enough at this point. He would have been really late, or, as some people claim, he'd made enough stink to have a good alibi.
Well, and he also made a stink with the person at the
newsstand.
At the newsstand.
Yeah, again,
it wasn't a stink, though, right? It was basically just saying, do you know where this address is?
He made enough of an impression.
A distinct interaction. And again, he asked her, he looked up and he said, do you know what I'm looking for? And she said, no. And he told her the address, and she said, no, that doesn't exist. And he said, okay, fine, I'm going to go home then, fine. And he got home, I guess it seems like he searched for about 45 minutes, all told. He got off the tram at 7:15. He
searched till 8.
Left probably about 8. Yeah. Got home, I guess around, I think that trip takes about 45 minutes. I think my math is good. It's a half an hour, maybe.
About a half an hour, but then again, he's got to wait for
a train.
It's not
Who
as if
knows when
the stupid thing just is there when you're there.
Right. I mean, maybe it is, but
Rarely.
Yeah.
But long story short, he got home about 8:45, right?
8:30 or 8:45. 8:30 is probably the earliest he could have gotten home, reasonably. 8:45 is probably when he got home. But again, the next time he's seen is 8:45. He's standing outside of his back door, and his neighbors, the Johnstons, are just leaving. They encounter him in the back alleyway, and he looks, God, what's the quote?
Worried and confused.
Worried and confused, thank you. He looks worried and confused, and they say, okay, Mr. Wallace, what's up? And he says, well, my keys aren't working. My key in the front or the back door, they're not working. And they said, well, we have a spare key to your house. Do you want us to try our key? And he said, I've never heard what he said, so I just assume he just kind of mumbled. And then he tried his backdoor key again, and miraculously it opened.
This time it worked, yeah.
And he seems confused and worried and weird, and we'll just wait till he gives us the all clear. So they kind of waited around, and he went upstairs, and he lit the gas in the parlor, and then he came back down and just very calmly said, come and see, she's been killed. Strange. I think he was in shock. I think he was in shock. Because I would be in shock if I walked into this.
Oh,
this scene.
Absolutely. But
for sure.
Can we stop for a second and talk about the door?
Yeah.
So he tried, if I understood correctly, and I just want to make sure I understand this, he tried the front door and his key wouldn't work, or the door wouldn't unlock. And then he went to the back door and he couldn't get it to unlock with his key. And then he tried it again in front of the Johnstones, and that's when it opened.
Yes.
Correct?
The back door opened.
The back door.
Yeah,
okay,
so they were apparently the the latch had been shut on the inside.
Is that what it was? Because I was thinking, well, maybe there was somebody, was the front door unlocked when they went to look at it later? Because it makes me wonder, hey, you can't maybe see in, and so he's trying his key, and somebody's holding the lock?
No, but you know what I just thought of is maybe the front door was unlocked when he arrived, and he accidentally locked it. It seems unlikely, but I guess
it seems like a drunk move, not a I just got home and peeved kind of move.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because if he actually was telling the truth, and say the bolt had been shot from the inside on both the front and the rear, then he comes home. If he is totally telling the truth and he wasn't just confused and not using his key correctly, that must mean the murderer was inside.
Exactly where I was going.
Yeah, so he's busy rattling the front door, and the murderer boogies out the back door, and of course he can't shoot the bolt this time around.
Right.
He pulls the door shut behind him and sneaks out down the alley.
Oh, that he would have tried the back door first, and that didn't work, so he tried the front door. And that didn't work, so he came back around.
At which point
they encountered him kind of walking back to try the back door again. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you can go.
The Johnstones?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that he said, my key's not working, and they said, okay, and he tried it again, and the bolt wasn't locked? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Huh.
So the door was locked, but the bolt had not been shot from the inside.
Interesting.
Because that's the only way this whole I can't get my key to work thing makes sense to me, is if somebody else was inside, manually operating a lock that he couldn't have access to.
That's true. Yeah, that's not a bad point. Although that would mean the murderer had a key to the house.
Not necessarily, because you don't use a key to lock your door from the inside.
No, but I guess he could have left the door unlocked, and that Mr. Wallace just out of habit tried to unlock it, and it worked. Right? That's what you're saying? Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's good. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so who knows?
There's not a scrap of evidence to support that, but...
Oh, I know.
Well, that's the refrain of this entire case, though. There's not a scrap of evidence to support that, but we're going to say it anyway. So, what did Mr. Wallace find? And I guess the Johnstones, Johnstones?
I think it's the Johnstones, but...
Johnstones.
Either way, they saw something they could never unsee.
Yeah, it was a really gruesome scene in the parlor. Julia had, her head had been bashed in 11 times. Her brain was exposed, and the blood splatter in some places was 7 feet up on the walls. Which is pretty high.
What happens when you beat somebody to death with a poker?
Definitely would, yeah. And the Johnstons, as I mentioned, the walls were thin in between, and I think the parlor wall, they shared a wall, and they had been home all night, and they said they hadn't heard anything, which is kind of weird. Like, one would assume that you would at least scream a little the first time you got hit.
Not if that first one catches you unawares and rattles your little brain.
Yeah, that's true.
That's entirely possible.
Followed by several swift hits, you're out. You're done.
Although there is one other explanation for them not hearing anything, and that is that they did it. And
that's possible.
There's actually I found somebody out there that claims that the Johnsons.
Well, we'll talk about that in theories, because it's actually not the worst theory out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we were talking about, we kind of, I guess, shot our load a little early. The big whole mystery on this thing is that all of the windows and doors were locked, ostensibly, when Mr. Wallace arrived. So it's one of those locked room mysteries where you're just like, how did the murderer get out?
Well, they weren't deadbolted though, were they?
I don't know. I think
that's the thing, is that it never says how they were locked.
Yeah, I mean, because you can always pull a door shut behind you.
Yeah, although it's 1931, so I don't know.
I don't know what kind of keys they had.
Yeah, I don't think they were. I think they were mostly deadbolt locks at that point.
Well, I know. Okay, my experience in Britain with locks has never been good, because I get locked out all the time when I'm over there. Because they don't believe in door handles. It's all keys, and they auto-lock behind you. Which is why I'm wondering if, like Joe said, they just auto-locked automatically. Yeah. That was the standard way to do it.
Yeah, but I guess...
I don't know.
I guess the frustrating thing in that case then, right, is that, like... then why is that such a big mystery? Like, if it's so ubiquitous in this area that doors would just lock behind you, why is everybody saying, well, and the doors were locked? Like, okay, cool, then the murderer left out the door.
Why are there so many claims about the things this guy could do?
Yeah.
Like, that's right up there with it.
That's true, yeah.
Although, if it was the old-fashioned kind, like the church key kind, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If it was one of those, in those days, a lot of the times people would leave their key in the lock on the inside, and that's a way to block somebody from the outside picking your lock, and so your key is blocking it, and that was very common in those days. So there might have just been a key in one of the front of the rear doors, just there.
True.
He just takes the key out, steps outside, pulls it shut, and takes the key and locks the door.
And calmly walks away.
And walks away all covered with gore.
Yeah, well, super covered in blood. Because that's the thing, is that, like, this person would have been just drenched in blood, coated in blood. There wasn't really anything missing. Mr. Wallace said that there were a couple pounds maybe missing, and then the only other thing that was missing were 2 fireplace instruments, a poker and a metal bar. I don't know what the metal bar was.
I could never determine what the bar was, but it finally showed up.
It finally
long
did
time
show up.
after. The poker never did show up, so
the poker didn't show up.
Just walked away,
and actually the bar showed up with no blood on it.
Like 80 years later.
Yeah, it was like in the back of the fireplace.
Yeah, it fallen through a hole in the bottom or something.
Yeah.
And then there's the Macintosh, the raincoat.
Oh yeah, and then there was a partially burned Macintosh or a raincoat underneath her body.
It was supposedly his.
It was his. There was no supposedly about it.
Oh, it was his?
It definitely was his, but that doesn't mean that he was, involved, really.
Oh, yeah, no,
because it would have been by the door, so.
Okay, see, that's funny, because I had heard contention that it might not have been his. Like, it may have been somebody else's, and they took his on the way out, say.
Oh, I guess that's fair. It matched his.
I thought it was his.
I thought it was his, too, but
I'm reading a lot between the lines.
The investigation into this is so poor that I guess I can't say definitively that it was his. It looked like his. That's all I can say.
Got it. Yeah.
They also didn't do any evidence or anything like that.
Because it had been partially burned.
It had been partially burned. Yeah. So
can I ask? Oh, I'm sorry. I know I do this to you all the time, but I have a question. Crime scene photo.
Yeah.
I swear I've seen it, but I also thought it was a recreation.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of pictures that look like they might be crime scene photos. I think they're all reenactments. Recreations. That's because there's not enough blood in any of them.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, I saw a couple of photos, and I think they were the real thing. They were taken either by police or by reporters on the night of.
Huh.
Yeah.
I saw those too, and I just didn't think that there was enough blood.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's kind of hard to tell. They're kind of murky pictures.
They're really, really murky.
Yeah. I saw these in a book. John Gannon wrote a book called The Killing of Julia Wallace.
He did. We're going to talk about it.
Have you seen that? Yeah. Have you seen the book? He's got a lot of pictures in there.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess I can't authenticate what the pictures, if they were real or not. Just again, because it doesn't seem like it looks like the crime scene was described to have been, but it's also possible that the description of the crime scene is inaccurate.
Well, I was going to say, that's the thing, is that I saw something that talked about when Julia was struck.